You are tuned into the Real Estate Agent Man Podcast, coming to you from Sarasota County, Florida. Future buyers and sellers, this podcast is for you. It's the place we discuss secrets of Florida real estate that should not be secrets. That was my attempt at whistling the Inspector Gadget theme song, because today we're talking about inspections.
And now your host of today's program, Steve Martin Smith.
I have often said that getting the buyer and seller from contract to closing is the most challenging part of our job. Now, what do I mean by that? In the daily life of a realtor, a buyer may contact us and say, we would like you to help us find a house. What they really mean is that they want us to help them own a house. Finding a house is actually about the easiest part of the process. Once we brought them to a property that they fall in love with and they want to own it, well, then we have to draft up the documentation and negotiate a contract. And it's not just about price, it's about price and terms. And part of the terms is the inspection period. And why is that inspection period in there? Well, it's because they may love the house the way it looks, but if there's something wrong with the house that they're not seeing right now, that could change their view on whether or not they're willing to pay that price for it or even still own it at all. So often after the inspections, we're going back to the negotiating table and we're trying to figure out at that point, is the seller going to pay for some repairs? Are the buyer and seller maybe going to go in halvesies on something? Is the house just in too rough of condition to even be repaired to the point where the buyers would be willing to own it? So there's a lot of things involved with that. And the type of contract that the offer is written on is critical to being able to negotiate through that process. You really have to understand the details of the two main Florida contracts in order to know which contract is going to best suit you as you are trying to work through these negotiations. And all that needs to be figured out before you write the offer. But since this is not a podcast on contracts, it is a podcast on inspections, I'm just going to leave that there and we can talk about contracts in more detail at another time. So yesterday I was at an inspection for underground pipes. Not everybody does inspections for underground pipes. It is a recommendation that I have learned to make to my buyers that they may want to get that checked if that is important to them. And sometimes that can be a deal killer, just like septic tanks can be a deal killer. If the pipes are shot and you have to dig up the pipes, it can easily be an $8,000 expense just to do the pipes. And then you're redoing all your flooring in your house. I was recently walking my dogs and I walked past this house that had just closed and I wasn't involved in the sale at all. But I had been watching the house because it had been on the market in my neighborhood. And the deal is now closed. I'm walking the dogs and I see large chunks of concrete in the garage in the driveway. And I knew exactly what it was. They were digging up the pipes in the house, tearing up the flooring. And that was not something that the buyers had expected to have to do. They knew they were going to have to get the pipes cleaned out. So they closed on the house, they got them cleaned out. And while they were doing that, one of the pipes, or multiple, I don't know, burst. And so at that point, they're now redoing all the pipes and all the flooring. So these are some things that can happen when you're buying a house. And you want to make sure that you are getting good counsel on what types of inspections are available to you so that you might be able to avoid these scenarios. Knowing how important all this is why when I first meet with buyers, I go through this checklist of items and I discuss multiple things with them that are going to be important to the process. Inspections is part of that. It is important that as soon as possible, you start looking into what inspections you're going to want. Certainly, whatever house you buy, you would probably want a general inspection and a pest inspection. Depending on whether there is a septic tank involved, of course, would determine that. All homes have pipes underneath them. Is that something you're going to want to have inspected? So these are conversations that you should be having with your realtor and figuring out what inspectors you're going to want to use before you get a house under contract. If you wait until you get your house under contract and then you're scrambling to find inspectors, your inspection period is only so long. It's very common to have them negotiated anywhere between 7 days and 15 days. So even if you have 15 days, that may seem like a lot of time. Sometimes the inspector that you've chosen is really busy or on vacation. So you really need to get that figured out sooner than later. Well, this was really meant to be an overview on inspections. Hopefully, in the future, I can get some professional inspectors in the podcast studio with me here, and we can give you more details. But for now, walk away with this. If you're thinking about buying a house, start thinking about what inspectors you are going to need and make contacts with them. Find out what they charge. Find out what they do. Just ask them, if I hire you to do my inspection, what are you going to inspect? And how are you going to relay that information to me? If you'll just do that up front, like about the same time you're contacting a realtor or the same time you're contacting a mortgage broker, just do it earlier in the process than what I see most people do, which is they find a house and they ask the realtor, hey, who should I get to inspect? Oh, that is not the right way to do this. Well, I do hope that you are finding this information helpful and that you would take a moment to tell the world by rating this podcast, hopefully with 5 stars, and putting just some details in so that the reader of the review can see it's not just one of my friends giving me a 5-star review, but somebody who actually is getting good information from this podcast. And remember, SteveMartinHomesGroup.com for your slice of Florida.
Real estate agent man, real estate agent man. Write down his cell phone number and do not forget his name. 941-894-9800. SteveMartinSmith.com. Steve Martin Smith is a licensed Florida realtor with Remax Platinum Realty and Steve Martin Homes Group.
For your slice of Florida.